Okay, it's 10:30 now, so I'm going to get going. I'm sure a few more stragglers will be joining us while I'm doing this initial waffle. Welcome to this Heritage Trust Network Northern Ireland event. A couple of things to note: the event's being recorded, so you can have a look at it afterwards and relive those golden moments. If you look at your screen, sort of top left, you should see a weird thing that refers to Otter AI. This is for if you're hard of hearing, you can see a transcript of what's being said live pop up. The running order, I believe, has been popped into the chat box, so you can see what's happening, and you can put any questions in the chat box and we'll answer them at the end in the Q&A session. Okay, so if you've not come across us before, let me stop sharing that picture now. Okay, welcome everybody. If you've not come across us before, Heritage Trust Network is the membership organisation for community organisations, charities, social enterprises that are rescuing, restoring and managing historic buildings and also other sort of structures, spaces, gardens, etc. We operate in all parts of the UK and currently have around 430 members and rising. Our membership also includes businesses that operate in the sector, such as consultants and architects and so on, and individuals who support our aims, including students who can join us for free. We're all about networking and peer learning, and the main way we operate is by facilitating our members to get together, share their experiences and learn from each other. We have an interesting and varied set of members in Northern Ireland, but we know there are many more organisations that could benefit from being part of the network, and we're very keen to improve our visibility and our impact in Northern Ireland. To that end, we're currently recruiting a part-time development officer for Northern Ireland. My colleague Bev will post the link to information about that job in the chat. Okay, so this event is about high streets. And we all know, we've all seen it on the news, read it in the papers, that high streets are in trouble. Hit first of all by unfair competition from out of town or edge of town retail parks and malls, and then by another lot of unfair competition from retail shopping. And we all know that city and town centre retail is in decline, and we've seen the announcements and the figures, and that we can witness it ourselves. And these are trends that have been greatly accelerated over the past year by the pandemic. So things that were maybe going to play out over 5, 10, 20 years have happened in 1 year. But we're all familiar with that. And in all parts of the UK, our members in the Heritage Trust Network are contributing to plans and strategies to find a new future for high streets and town and city centres more generally. And we think heritage is key to those plans, because historic buildings, spaces, historic streetscapes have a huge potential to bring the diversity and authenticity that people want from a different type of high street. A future high street which is more about enjoying an experience than dealing with the necessities of life. So we've assembled a diverse group of speakers to talk about how community-led regeneration of historic buildings and town centres is happening all over Northern Ireland. But first, I'm going to show a short film about one of our members is doing in England, where I live, in Coventry. It's edited from a longer film that I made for our conference back in November, so apologies about the sound quality in places and the sort of raggy editing at the beginning and at the end. I am no Hollywood director. So I'll just share this with you. Shall I go down there? I'm now in Coventry city centre, and I'm standing opposite the corner of the Burgess and Hale Street. The work you see happening behind me is being carried out on behalf of another one of the network's members, Historic Coventry Trust. I asked Carol Pyra, the Executive Director of the Trust, to tell me about these two streets.
The Burgess is one of the few remaining streets in Coventry that is a traditional high street. It was a medieval street that backed onto the River Sherborne. Just below us here is a little alleyway called Palmer Lane, so called because the pilgrims would lodge there in medieval period. So it's a really historic part of the city. Like many traditional high streets, it was refronted in the 18th and early 19th century, and indeed Hale Street at the bottom of the road was entirely created in the 19th century. So we've got the normal set of multi-period buildings, shops with rooms above them. A large number of them are owned by the council, and they will be passing to Historic Coventry Trust.
And Historic Coventry's project has special national significance, as Carol explained.
It's been a long ambition of the council and Historic Coventry Trust to see regeneration of this area, and we were very lucky in getting £2 million from Historic England last May to do the national demonstrator project for the High Street Heritage Action Zone. So essentially what we're doing is a classic high street regeneration. We're repairing the buildings, we're restoring lost architectural features like these lovely sash windows, and we're restoring shop fronts, putting in new shop fronts where they were very modern shop fronts.
I was keen for Carol to tell me what sort of a place they're trying to create in the Burgess and Hale Streets.
I think one of the ways that high streets are going to recover from coronavirus is about independence. I think the big chains are going to really, really struggle, but what you can't replicate online is the experience of going into a really great independent shop, having great customer service, that sort of sense of experience that you get when you're going out shopping. And I think that's what the Burgess and Hale Street provides in Coventry. They're pretty much all independent businesses. We've got a fantastic clothing retailer, Con, been on the street for 30 years, a real kind of beacon. We've got new businesses opening, so there's a sort of a sweet treats place around the corner that's opening. It's going to provide a place where independence can thrive in Coventry City Centre.
The 15 buildings that the Historic Coventry Trust are refurbishing as part of this High Street Heritage Action Zone are among the 22 historic buildings that they are working on in a groundbreaking agreement with Coventry City Council. Okay, well, and that work on the Burgess and Hale Street is now complete, and it looks really fantastic. And great to see Carol there as a sort of heritage geek, sort of stroking the sash windows. That's a nice moment. So we're very pleased at the Heritage Trust Network to have recently received financial support from the Department for Communities here in Northern Ireland, which means we now have a full set of government heritage bodies in the UK supporting us. And I'm delighted to welcome Iain Greenway to say a few words. As many of you will know, Iain is Director of the Historic Environment Division at Department for Communities. Iain.
Thank you very much, David. Good morning, colleagues, friends, and welcome to this event. It's great to see everybody, if in two dimensions, in little bubbles, but that's the world we're living in just for the time being. And we can stroke frames or whatever else we want at another time, maybe. But I wanted to have the chance to make a few comments, and it is great we have been able to provide some support to HTN in Northern Ireland, and that is helping to put in place a part-time development officer for Northern Ireland. I suppose the challenge then is that funding is there. We have to show that it makes a difference and that it achieves something. It's hard to continue funding something if it doesn't do that. So that these things always have two edges to them. We had a planning meeting of the speakers. Beverly has been very assiduous in this on Tuesday, and we had a decent debate about what is a high street, what isn't a high street. We had a decent debate around what recovery means. We didn't see the need to debate what heritage is. And maybe that says something about the group that was together, the group of speakers that was together on Tuesday. Because I guess many of us on the screens here understand, or maybe feel we know the benefits of local identity and authenticity of what works locally. And that was picked up in the film earlier. But I guess the challenge for me, for all of us, is have we managed to share that either at a general level or of using case studies in Coventry or Carrickfergus or wherever else as exemplars of what has been achieved and what can be achieved. Some of you would have been at the Historic Environment Stakeholder Group in the Old Larne Town Hall many months ago now. Well, any meeting was many months ago, but even more months ago than that. And Iain Doyle from the Heritage Council spoke about Ballybrilliant, their publication about small towns and what can be done in small towns in authenticity in Ireland. And he mentioned a book called No One Shouted Stop by John Healy, which I had forgotten all about that, but I must have asked our library at the time to see if they could get me a copy. And it arrived with me last week. I haven't read it yet, but it's about Charleston and County Mayo by John Healy, as I say, and it was formerly called Death of an Irish Town. I'm going to read it and I'm going to be thinking, could that happen here? Sorry, could that happen again? Could it happen here? And John Anderson is on the screen and I know would passionately tell us it is already happening here many times and in many places. Yes, a sage nod from my friend in Larne there. But that all brings me back to how do we share the lessons, the evidence, the opportunities, and indeed the challenges, and how we would have done things differently if we came to them again, so that we can continue to improve on what we're doing. This morning's session is going, once I finish dribbling on here, is going to contain a good number of examples from large-scale, far-reaching plans within city deals, to coordinated programs of interventions, and to individual groups with individual buildings. All have their story to tell, all seek to, as the title of the session says, to revive, to refresh, to reimagine, and there will be much, I'm sure, to listen to think about, and to connect to. But the challenge for me, to me, as well as to everyone else, is how do we take what we hear, how do we embed that and its lessons to a wider audience, beyond the people who have already get it and already done it, because that is how we are going to build on making the difference that we've already made. That is how this is going to be embedded in simply how we do things in Northern Ireland or in Coventry or wherever else it is. And that for me is the challenge I'd ask we all keep in mind as we hear great stories, fabulous stories about what has been achieved and what is planned in different places. How do we connect that to the wider decision making, to the wider authorities, to the wider tapestry? David, I think I pass back to you now to hand on to the baton on to the next speaker. Thank you, colleagues.
Thanks very much, Iain, and I think you've neatly queued up the next speaker, because whilst HTN is all about community-led initiatives, it's important those take place within the context of an overall strategy of investment in place to make the most of historic assets. And I think Jonathan Porter, Programme Manager for Belfast Region City Deal at Carrickfergus, is going to tell us about one place where that's happening. Jonathan.
Yes, thank you, David and Iain, for the introduction. I'm going to talk about Carrickfergus Region City Deal this morning. So my internet is playing up slightly, so fingers crossed it keeps working for us here. I'm just going to share the presentation. Can you all see that? Yeah? Okay, yes. Perfect. Okay, I've got quite a few slides to get through here, so I'm going to go fairly quickly at this and we can pick up any queries at the end. So if you're not familiar with the city deals, there are basically 4 different pillars associated with them. So you have innovation and digital, boosting tourism regeneration, infrastructure and employability and skills. So the Belfast Region City Deal at Carrickfergus is under the boosting tourism and regeneration in our region. So what is it? So it's a programme of investment to regenerate, reposition and rebrand the town of Carrickfergus, placing it firmly on the map as an authentic heritage-led tourism hub, part of the wider Belfast story and a must-see starting point to the internationally recognised Causeway coastal route. So in essence, that's the goal for Carrick. So there are a number of different elements associated with the project. We have the castle, obviously, itself, 12th century castle. As many of you will be aware, we have the town walls, as it was a wall. It is a wall town, although it's not completely obvious that that's the case. We are going to create a new visitor centre outside of the castle. We've got a lighting scheme, we've got cycleways, we've got the railway station, we've got the radar tower, we want to rebrand the town, we've got the Carrickfergus Museum, there's the Flame Gasworks, and we have the Andrew Jackson Cottage and Ranger Station. So there's quite a few elements within Carrickfergus that we're incorporating within this project. So the castle itself, you'll see there the building at number 1 is where the existing visitor centre is located. So what we want to do is take that out of the castle altogether, so that when you enter the front gate of the castle, you're basically stepping back in time. The new building, we're proposing a new 2-storey building in this location, so that's going to be an orientation building whenever you get into the castle first of all. Down at number 2 is where the Great Hall was. So we want to put that back in some shape or form to create a banqueting facility with a kitchen to the side. And number 4 is basically assisted access to get us up into the existing castle keep. So in terms of the overall interpretation for the castle, as the building I mentioned at number 1 is basically going to be, the proposal is for it to be Meet the Archaeologists. So we can talk about all the sorry, my coffee machine is doing something weird. Okay. So Meet the Archaeologists. So that basically, we can talk about the archaeology associated with the castle throughout the years and tell the stories of that. We'll have a banqueting experience. We'll have fully immersive audio-visual experiences, costumed actors and all that sort of stuff as you'd expect to see at a castle. So just some idea of set dressing. So really we want to have it that it looks like the people who were using the space had just left the building as you go around, and all sort of modern interventions are removed from the castle completely. So there are a number of different ways to help us tell the story and animate the scenes. So we have in situ, handheld devices and costumed actors. So in terms of the in situ stuff, we have audio-visual mapping, projection, etc., showing actors, events and atmosphere. So when we talked about meeting the archaeologist, we're able to show some of the features within the castle and animate those to basically help us tell the story of the castle over the years and what we found as part of the works that are ongoing at the castle to improve the conservation elements. We have then the ability to project onto various aspects of the castle to tell stories and sort of bring the spaces to life. You'll see the bottom left there is Mary Rose and Portsmouth Historic Dockyard, where they project onto the bones of the ship to help tell the story and bring the spaces alive. Part of the audiovisual is fully immersive sort of dramatic the visitors of various aspects in time. We have, this is the banqueting hall, so we have the ability to use the AV to show what the banqueting hall would look like when it's in full use, as well as it is today. So it's to help tell those stories. And we have here, the tourist board did a little bit of work with HED in the past, and this is a cutaway of the keep, basically showing what it would have been used, how it was used actually back in the day. So this is the sort of technology we're going to use to help tell the story of the castle. I have a little short video here which will sort of demonstrate what the technology is capable of and what we would like to develop as part of this going forward. So that's the sort of technology that can be used, and at the moment the idea would be to use some sort of handheld device to be able to see this technology. We're hoping that with 5G this can be projected directly to people's mobile phones, and as the technology develops going forward. We also have the ability to use other handheld devices like dataton systems to provide, you know, age-appropriate content, different languages, etc., as you go around the various aspects of the castle and the walls. And then the use of costumed actors, basically, to bring the set and scenes alive. In the low season, it's basically just having several characters dotted around the castle, and then in the busier periods to have demonstrations, blacksmiths, cooks, soldiers training, archery, etc. All the type of stuff you'd expect to see at a castle. And then the ability to host special events, reenactments, themed fairs, mead hall, food and drink, all that sort of good stuff. Now this is an aerial photograph over the castle, and you can see to the left-hand side the car park that's currently there. That's really the location for a new visitor centre. So we can get it out of the castle and create a new living room for the town, as we're calling it. We looked at loads of different exemplar designs, and the example there of the Giant's Causeway Visitor Centre is basically built into the hill in exactly the same way. We're trying to sort of create a visitor centre, but it doesn't take away from the castle itself. So if you can see this, this is the castle. So what we want to do is locate the visitor centre at the far end of the car park and create a pond, as it were, that could be potentially drained out and used as an exhibition space, an entertainment space. So the idea being that you're looking across the water at the castle as it would have been back in the day, because this is the car park is basically reclaimed land. So that we're calling it the living room for the town, because we want this visitor centre not just for tourists, but for the local community to be able to use, for local artists, and basically for people to just drop into at any point of the day. So within the visitor centre, we've got an interactive zone, we've got a historic gallery, a cafe, an introduction hub and title sequence, basically as part of your tour of the castle, tourist information, a shop, a gallery, and community space. So it's quite a lot contained within the visitor centre itself. This is just an artist's impression of what it might look like looking across the water to the castle from the visitor centre. And then we obviously have the town walls. So you can see there from 3B, where the arrow was pointing all the way around to sort of 3J, 3K. The walls are in actually reasonably good condition, but in other areas they're gone completely. So the idea is to put those back in so that you know you're driving into and out of a historic wall town, which isn't there at the moment. So quickly just going around the walls at 3B, we want to create a space where you can actually get up on top of the walls and create the wall walk with assisted access to get you up and down. At 3C is adjacent to the church. Is the idea is to create a Japanese knot garden. So when you're on top of the wall, you've got a lovely vista looking down on it. 3F is where the current bowling green is, so we want to shunt the bowling green slightly to the north to create the walkway. So again, all of this is about creating walking trails for tourism as well. So we've got a lighting scheme that's going to go all the way around the walls to make it safe, and we're going to use planting to screen off the existing car parks, etc. 3G is the back of the existing De Courcy Centre. So we see that as a good space to get people up and down onto the walls at this point. And this is just an artist's impression of what it might look like to get you up and down. At the moment, the space at the back of the De Courcy Centre isn't really used. So there's actually a cafe as part of the buildings within the De Courcy Centre. So we see that as a great space to create a piazza or a seating area outside. 3K then is where Irish Gate is or was, and we like to put that back in some shape or form. Just some artist's impressions here of sort of gates that could, is basically where it cuts across the road back to the castle. And it's really about trying to put some modern form of wall back in. Where it currently isn't. We're going to create this trail around the walls. The other major issue at the moment is we have 4 lanes of roadway cutting the castle off from the town. And we've been working really closely with DFI, Department for Infrastructure, on the plan to basically link the castle back to the town. At the moment, the steps when you leave the castle, we want to reorient the steps at the front to drive you towards the town. We also want to reduce the marine highway down to 2 lanes, where on that proposal, which Castle Square. So we're trying to link the town and the castle back together much better. The road system down to 2 lanes to basically we have a roundabout then, an existing roundabout located just to the left. The idea being is that that's changed for a traffic light junction, so we can throttle the train. Victoria walkway from the train station down to the town, which is not overly inviting at the moment, so that's a sort of key part of this. And improving the linkages to the rest of the town, so walkways inside Carrick. Most of the people live to the back of the town, and we want to improve the walkways and cycleways from the housing and further development down into the town itself. We have the radar station, which is located at the end of the pier, which is basically a derelict building at the moment, but that would make an excellent observation space, and we have a little scheme there to do that up and provide a great lookout space to look basically from Belfast all the way around to Crawfordsburn.
We've got 1 minute left, Jonathan.
Yeah, we're nearly there, and obviously rebranding of the town is another key aspect of the use of sculptures and iconography, and basically creating an identity for the town. Just harking back to the earlier presentation, we have a serious issue in Carrick of roller shutter alley, and that's one of the things that we really want to not great, and we got thing buildings. So we're trying to create an iconic destination with year-round appeal. We've already undertaken some work at the castle to replace the keep roof, which you can see here, and this is the inside of it. So that's really the first step with HED. We have other Grand Battery and EC Tower this year continue on. in preparation for important aspect operator point of view. And that's something we're looking at in terms of that's a very quick whistle stop tour of what
thank you, Jonathan. I think we, I don't know if everybody else, but we certainly lost a bit of your sound during that, but I didn't interrupt because I think we really got the gist of it and we could see what was happening from the slides. An incredibly ambitious project, and yes, I'm sort of looking forward to visiting Carrickfergus in the future. It looks amazing. Our network works very closely with the Architectural Heritage Fund throughout the UK, and we're currently delivering a programme of events around high street regeneration for them in England in partnership with locality. And, you know, a good result of the pandemic is that all those events are online, so you can see them too. And even when we go back to physical events later in the year, there will be parallel online events to look at. So have a look on our website for those. And AHF is often the first port of call for funding for community groups tackling historic sites. And that has certainly been the case in Northern Ireland. So I'm pleased to introduce Rita Harkin, who I know had her hair done specially for this event yesterday. And she's a support officer for Northern Ireland for AHF, and is going to talk about their Heritage Transformed programme as it relates to high streets. Rita.
I don't want to disillusion you, it wasn't for this event, but anyway, yes, it made a special effort for everybody. Thanks very much, David. I'm delighted to be here representing the AHF and to be involved heavily with the Heritage Trust Network's Northern Ireland branch. As well, having organised previous events and this one. I'm looking forward to working very closely with the development officer when they arrive too. As David says, the network and AHF work very closely together, showcasing and connecting inspiring projects right across the UK, helping to grow this increasingly valuable, I think, grassroots movement and to demonstrate the impact. And as Iain says, that is the challenge, is to get beyond the echo chambers, get beyond, we all need to connect with those other regeneration and bigger forces, high street task forces and so on, to make that case more forcibly, to demonstrate the impact and the potential. So it's great then today to look at how AHF, the work can make more of a difference really to the beleaguered high streets in this part of the world. And I'm going to show some slides as well. So. Okay there, yeah, good. So there's a fund, some of you might know, has been around from 1976. So there's been work going on here in Northern Ireland since then. But you know, thanks to the Department for Communities, the Pilgrim Trust, Garfield Weston, since 2017, we've been able to deliver a much more focused programme, Heritage Transformed, with a focus on historic buildings and projects that benefit the communities, but particularly looking at areas of disadvantage. And this programme then has allowed us to kind of deepen our role, deepen the impact and develop that role in finding sustainable uses. And this is just to kind of give you a sense of the span of the work in terms of the geographic spread, which is pretty equitable, I hope you'll agree. Located in towns, or cities, towns and villages and beyond, with, as I say, a focus on areas of deprivation in particular. And they're led by, we talk about diversity, they're led by a very diverse and ambitious range of charities and social enterprises, expanding well beyond the traditional building preservation trusts that AHF predominantly engaged with in the early days. Although, of course, BPTs remain a very important part of that mix still. Only some texty slides, but this is really just to give you a snapshot of, as my role as support officer is to advocate for the value of these projects, as we said, to provide advice, to connect people, to broker relationships and so on, but to also administer a targeted grants programme, which seeks really to plant seeds where they have the most purchase in terms of maximising social impact. You see here the viability grants. Some in the room have been able to avail of some of these small grants, which have, I think, really important. The early stages part is really important in terms of shaping the projects and setting them off on the right path. So for some of you who don't know, the early grants can do things like get condition surveys carried out, conduct feasibility studies, get broad sense of costings. Early community engagement, which is increasingly important in terms of defining what the needs are in the area, which will lead to more solid uses down the line. Meanwhile, uses, which of course today are increasingly important as we're slightly uncertain about how things are going to pan out, to go and test, and we can fund from that kind of activity, and to do some business planning work as well, that kind of early crunching stage fed into through by the community engagement pieces. And then the development grants, which allow, once a project's been basically established being broadly economically viable, then groups can come back and find community, or rather development grants to allow fees to be covered, community shares to be developed, so on, project management, coordination, very flexible in terms of addressing the project's need at whatever stage of the journey it's at. And again, thanks to DFC, we're able to give loans for acquisition and working capital through the Heritage Impact Fund, and Kilcooley will be talking about their project. They're one of the recipients of that loan finance as well. David mentioned kind of work across UK. This is looking enviously across to see the projects that have been supported in England in particular, that my colleagues have been working on thanks to DACMS funding with a £15 million grant. Again, ahead of the time, noting the trajectory of the high streets. So these are pre-COVID, but as you said, the signs were there, but seeing the opportunities for charities, social enterprises and larger heritage development trusts like the one in Coventry and the one here, Tyne and Weir below, to start to inject uses, different yes, needs to be addressed really through these buildings. And I would argue, David, I suppose it is about beyond experiential tourism and so on. It is also addressing core needs, as you'll see in some of the projects locally here as well. So that's sort of the wider context across the water in terms of HF. And in Scotland, looking at community benefit societies as a vehicle backed by the Community Land Fund, my colleagues there assisting with this exemplar in Dumfries, the mid-steeple quarter. Again, you can see from that sort of basic image, but looking at that sort of sprinkling of different types of uses and the mixture of uses, of course, which you can have with each individual buildings as well as along the street itself. So, I mean, just the finer grain and the higher the diversity seems to be the good recipe for longevity. So just turning to some local examples, I'm going to go take you through just some from the cities, the towns and the villages, and then, excuse me, I'll take a drink of water as well. So in Colm's Trust, these two examples I'm taking you from the cities are really kind of focusing on the importance of cultural uses in terms of injecting life and rationale really for people to come into town and to spend time. And you can see from the slide on the left, this is in Colm's Hall, excuse me, which is, as you see, strategically located alongside the river, and you'll see those monolithic developments alongside the Millennium Forum on the left and the huge shopping centre on the right, and there it stands with potential then to draw people back in when the retail is on the wane. And in this case, a viability grant has allowed the Trust to carry out a condition survey, to do some very thorough key stakeholder engagement and flush out potential partners for this Grade A listed hall. And their idea is to create a music venue with some aspect of film and creative therapy centre of excellence, as well as space for youth assembly. So they're, I'd say, relatively early stage of the journey, but they start to kind of provide a beacon of hope of what the city centre can be in terms of redefining, say, the reasons, not just for daytime, but nighttime economy as well. And I'm sure a lot of you will be familiar with Riddle's warehouse. This is the Ironmonger warehouse in Belfast city centre. And I do think the regeneration teams across these islands are starting to see these buildings and cultural uses as a lifeline to the city centre. And there's a sense that their time has come to establish them in terms of their importance. And the mixture of uses proposed here are for performance space. As you can see already through meanwhile uses being demonstrated as being a popular venue. The BBC are using it constantly for filmmaking. Independent filmmakers are in there a lot. So I think we've already established that there is a hunger to use this space and for co-working space as well. And also reinforcing the potential for all of these projects, I suppose, to showcase the power of the green economy and developing skills training, using them as a platform, and connecting with that bigger message about youth unemployment as well. So just to give you just as an example, Hearth was able to avail of a viability grant to do a broad viability piece to create a community benefit society so it could potentially access community shares, to review its business plan in light of COVID-19 and this was in a position then to approach larger funders like the Lottery Fund, Heritage Lottery Fund. And the development grant will cover architects' fees, and then the loan from DFC, HF by DFC, is for working capital, and a small capital works grant programme was available through the COVID Culture Recovery Fund to allow some urgent repairs to the roof, and that would allow some meanwhile uses to take place. So it just gives you a sense of the kind of combination of ways that AHF can support these buildings and these projects at an early stage. Then turning to the towns, I think Kieran's in the room today. Open House Festival really has been a leading light in the redefinition of the raison d'etre of towns via their Courthouse project. And I'm very pleased that HF was able to offer a development grant, a small part of their puzzle, but to help to support staff costs and so on, to assist with this very visionary asset transfer project, which Charlie Fisher will talk about a little bit in more detail, I'm sure, later on. You'll also hear from Kilcooley Women's Centre, the old market house, at the other side of the town. So you'll hopefully see in due course a pull and push between these two buildings to really help animate the main street. And I'm really delighted they were then awarded a loan from the HF, as well as a project viability grant to cover fees to move their project forward as well. And top right, I think Ellen is here as well. Our Space Gallery is already bringing life to Castle Street through its gallery, and the grant from us has allowed them to investigate developing those uses, creating some residential above, and trying to animate the courtyard beyond to the rear with social enterprises with an arts focus. And then a very current one here in the bottom right is Kilkeel. The Kilkeel Development Association here, the funding has allowed them to do some architectural feasibility work and to test out the idea. And even through COVID, their community consultation drew over 900 responses. So it's this building is becoming increasingly important in this very divided town, to show how as a place to bring people together, and again a reason for people to come and spend time both during the day and in the evening as well. And again backed by DTNI. So moving down then towards the villages, this is Bush Mills Courthouse, supported through a viability grant, which is levered funding through Piece 4 funding. I think by the end of it, they managed to accumulate £4 million. They're still developing their final plans, but this is a social enterprise which would never really have engaged with historic buildings before, taking on the courthouse, which has been empty for, I think, maybe 40 plus years, to relocate their social enterprise designery, kind of craft, artists showcase, a shop and a community space plus work unit. So again, the diversity of uses within the one building and some development to the rear. Excuse me. So, and this is a key project or set of projects that I've been working with through a pilot called Village Catalyst. Very important initiative and increasingly prescient in terms of very small scale projects, but have a big story to tell about how we move forward through community-led regeneration. This is an initiative by the Department of Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs and the Department for Communities, and it's just coming to a close as 3/4 year pilot. And I was charged with finding 4 projects that might be a good fit, to find projects and to help shape them, to ensure that the uses that they came up with were a good fit with the priorities of the Department of Agriculture, and that was to tackle rural poverty and social isolation. I just realised I've double ruled up there. Yeah, so it's rural poverty and social isolation was the focus of the DERA framework, And so all of these buildings and projects, the groups really needed to think hard about what they were delivering through these buildings that would be able to access funding. So top left, the post office in Grace Hill, we brokered a relationship between the Building Preservation Trust and Now Group, a social enterprise which works with young adults with learning difficulties and autism to find jobs for the future. So their idea was to use this as a training hotel to grow from their existing cafe business and to work with the group to do this new initiative, which was, excuse me, to deliver training through the hotel. So that was because of that alliance, they were able to then access funding. And the top right, Ederney, their initial plan was to create a mini museum. Again, that wasn't a fit really with the funding priorities, so they shifted their uses to create a wellbeing hub and co-working space, which is in such huge demand that it's now spilling into other buildings. So the town hall, now they're seeking to occupy that, and the parish hall, and we've got 3 or 4 other buildings, and the building next door, as you can see, the post office, also being restored. So truly catalytic effect from one small project, great leverage. Derek will talk about the fantastic project at Chandler's House with affordable housing, which is incredibly important. And that was a new partner then that came in, the housing executive. So we've got a really rich mix, rich cocktail of funders involved. So we've got diversity in terms of government, silo busting between DFC and DERA. And we've got combinations on the ground of partners and mixtures of uses then as a result within the buildings. And I think these are, the villages really have led the way in terms of how we engender recovery. And bottom right, we've got the childcare facility. Initially, they anticipated using them for residential use here. But again, working with the group, we asked them, through the viability grant, they were able to test out the idea of a childcare facility because it became clear that the local school was actually in danger of closing without a childcare facility in the village. So you've got a huge positive ripple effect across a small village. With Caledon Estates there as a private investor. And this is just gratuitous nice shots of a building which shows you this is actually a modernist architect, Mark Hackett, working with the group to kind of, I don't want to use the word fusion, but can't think of another word, but combining to exploit this existing unlisted building actually in a conservation area and then to create some contemporary additions, which I think work extremely well. But again, just to, like riddles, to give you a snapshot of just that mix then, the funding cocktail, and that advice and discussions, connections beyond the funding, but the funding does help to do that early testing to see how robust the idea is and to set it on its way. So the viability grant got a handle on the cost, a condition survey, feasibility study, and through that process, then you engage with the schools, the wider community, and everybody gets to know about and has an ownership, a sense of ownership of this project. With the council then coming in behind, and as I say, private investors. So it's a really good mix, which then in turn, as we give funders confidence, Village Catalyst, the council itself again, the estates company, the lottery fund, and then HF through DFC's COVID recovery capital funding. So it just gives you, I think, a good idea of how that sequence works and how we get that rich mix. And this is my last slide. I suppose just to say that all of these pieces I've talked about today, the transforming places through heritage in England, the heritage transformed here, Village Catalyst, so they're all telling us something about how we move forward in terms of the future of towns and village centres. Looking at community-led housing, you can read for yourselves, but spaces, the hubs, the childcare facilities talked about, cultural uses, workspaces, independent retail, which is increasingly important in engendering that sense of loyalty and buy-in from the local community. But it's really community wealth building, I suppose we're talking about here. It's very much chiming with the language you'll hear from Charlie later on. And as Kevin Richards, who leads our programme in England, just reinforcing the fact that there really is an important role to play, and we just need to, I think, blow that trumpet a bit harder, as Iain mentioned at the outset. Was that even 8 minutes? 15 minutes?
A whistle-stop tour through so many amazing projects in Northern Ireland, which
we didn't. Yeah, Iain always gives me jip for cramming too many things in. I get greedy. I thought I'd tried to edit as best I could, but yeah. But basically, it's it's how we work together to try and Chris, I need to stop sharing. That's it. Yeah. How we maximise that potential is the next challenge.
Absolutely. And we certainly look forward to bringing all those groups together where we can. So not all of our members, and I think as Rita's slide indicates, not all of our members, not all of the organisations involved in this work are organisations that are dedicated to conserving the historic environments, like building preservation trusts. An increasing number of them, an increasing number of our members, are community organisations that have simply found an amazing old building that they want to make their home. And one such organisation is Kilcooley Women's Centre, and we have Executive Director Alison, Blayney and Tracy Harrison, their childcare manager, here to talk to us. Alison and Tracy, over to you.
Thank you very much. I'm Tracy Harrison, and it was amazing to be asked to be here. Just going to do a bit of a presentation on the work that we are planning to do in the old market house, former Danske Bank, in a prime location within Bangor town centre. So it's a grade B listed building, and it was there from 1780. So basically our role that we can play is revamping this historic building and how it can play a part in regenerating the high street in Northern Ireland, the benefits of community-led regeneration of historic high streets, and how we can partnership with local authority, businesses, social enterprises and community organisations and bring about high street generation. I know we have quite a few people here from Northern Ireland, and they all know obviously where Bangor is, but for our England representatives, just to show you a bit of a map of where we are, right over on the right hand side where you see the North Down sign is where we're located. And this is the vast area that we cover as part of Kilcooley Women's Centre, Ards and North Down, population of 170,000 people, and we work right across the peninsula, urban and rural. Bangor has always been a beautiful seaside town where a lot of people many years ago used to go on vacation. Not so much now, because there's been it's fell into a bit of disrepair. There's a lot of work needs done to Bangor town centre, and hopefully we're going to be part of that. The Seafront city deal, as you can see, it doesn't look great at the moment. This basically looks onto the sea. The city deal is going to bring about new greenways, the coastal path, the re-imaging of Ballyholme Beach and the redevelopment of Bangor Seafront, as well as a new enterprise park and innovation hub linked to Regional Innovators Network. So this is the way it looks at the moment. Linking it to the old market house, to public realm investment. We're part of the Belfast region city deal. We're very, very close to Belfast. So it's great to be part of that, the same as Carrickfergus. And this is a bit of a vision as to what we suppose Bangor hopes to achieve with a multi-million-pound investment. Just a wee bit of background on ourselves. We formed in 1995 through 5 volunteers based within Kilcooley Estate in Bangor. We have our headquarters in Blue. We have training studios in Blue as well. We also do extensive outreach to rural peninsula as far as Portaferry. We straddle urban and rural and cater for both sections of the community, albeit Bangor is predominantly a Protestant community. We do work, and it would surprise you just how diverse we are when it comes to working with both sides of the community. We manage one social economy business, and we're incubating 2 further business models. We have 2 fully registered childcare units. It's called Ladybird's Childcare and wraparound support for women, children and families. We deliver a wide range of adult and community education and employability programmes, and we're lead partner in Kilcooley Health Improvement Partnership, and we're financed by a cocktail of funders. So we work with an average of 500 women per week. We have delivered 29 projects between 2019 and 20. We have 15 plus learning places per year, over 100 plus children per week in our childcare unit, and over 3,500 childcare slots per year. 24 staff in total. So programs, this is pretty much what we do. Not going to read it all out. You can just see up there exactly. We deliver a vast range of health, training, and employability programs. But I suppose just to mention, we are very much involved with Erasmus, the European Transnational Training Mobility, European Strategic Partnership Programs. A bit more what we do: peace and reconciliation, good relations, active citizenships. Again, you can read the rest of pretty much all we cover. Flagship women programs in Ards and North Down. Pretty much it continues. It's all about supporting women, children and families to make their lives better and steer them away from the effects of paramilitarism. Again, more of what we do in terms of intergenerational programs, right through gender equality, family support, school engagement, debt advice, lobbying and advocacy. We are considered a community college. We're registered with awarding bodies, so we don't just deliver training, we also do examinations on site. We have on-site childcare to support women, and we deliver a broad range of subjects, as you can see. We decided to do this service support map basically just to try and encompass absolutely everything that we do within Kilcooley, and as you can see, it's a vast. Until we started to do this, I don't think we realised just how much we did, but this has been over a period of 26 years. This is everyone we work in partnership with, and hope that will very much continue with this project. And as part of our Erasmus programme, this is all of the countries across Europe that we work with. You can see it's quite vast. Now to the bank. This is a former Danske bank. It has been up for sale for quite a while, and we have been really interested in it, and thankfully through the heritage architectural loan, we have been able to purchase the bank. We're currently waiting on planning permission coming through, and the plan is to restore the lost architecture and development, and develop a mixture of community and social enterprise use once we do what we want to do with the building. So this is what the bank currently looks like. I think there was at one point talk of it becoming a Witherspoons, a cafe, restaurant. Thankfully, that didn't happen, and we have been able to get it. Wee bit of history of the building. The building's of significant social and historical interest. It's been continually modernised and sadly has lost a lot of its fabric, compromising its character. Clock tower, I'm just gonna... So compromising its character, clock tower and original clock is still in situ, and it looks absolutely amazing from the inside. Links to the Ward family and its historic importance are of note as a significant civic building in Bangor with ornate facade displaying good craftsmanship. The original building dates back to 1777 and originally built as a market house. It was owned by Lord Bangor and Colonel Ward. First floor was used as a ballroom and for music recitals. It's been used as a courthouse, rent office, parochial school, Ward Public Elementary School, Town Hall in 1933, and from 1952 a bank. It's a square on the plan with a single-storey return and two-storey, sorry. Oh, I flicked that, I don't know how to get it back. There we go. Hip natural slate roof with terracotta rigid tiles, simple chimney stack, cast iron, ochre rainwater, goods on moulding eaves, smooth painting walls with stucco with, I can't even say these words, I'm sorry, but you can read them. Multi-pane Venetian windows, round-headed to ground floor. Another few photos of the inside. The building has been maintained in very good condition, but obviously lost any historic memories of what it could be like, and hopefully we will bring it back to its former glory. So this is a bit of what the building looks like from different angles. And this is the initial drawings of what we want to bring it back to look like once it's all complete. A few of the plans. No, they're quite small. The upper level, we hope to have a roof garden, and we think this is going to be absolutely amazing. So what our vision is, we want to restore the historical aesthetics of the building. We want to ensure community and public access. We want to develop a social economy model, definitely. It's something we have a bit of experience of doing. However, we will need a lot of help from the Architectural Heritage Trust Network. So I'm delighted that they are going to be doing a lot more in Northern Ireland, because we will need their help, as well as Architectural Heritage Trust as well. We hope to have a tea room, and I'll show you a photograph of that shortly. As I said, the roof garden's really exciting for us. We would like training and conference space, maybe have an art exhibition space and a co-working space. What are the challenges and what are the opportunities? Well, not everyone is supportive as what we would have hoped, given we are a community group. we are obviously inexperienced in listed buildings, but hopefully with the support of the Heritage Trust Network, they'll get us to where we need to be. And we're women and we're very determined, so I think that helps a lot. Obviously planning delays due to the pandemic. I have planners tortured, and the plans hopefully are, the planning approval is imminent.
You've got 1 minute left, Tracy.
Thank you. So what's our opportunities? Fabulous support and encouragement through Architectural Heritage Fund. Post-COVID recovery opportunity for the High Street. Prime location, can't emphasize enough. It's part of the bigger picture, the bigger multi-million pound investment to transform Bangor to its former glory and bring a lot of footfall back, which is what we're good at. We're good at bringing people. We have the drive and determination to make this a success no matter what. A warm welcome by the business community and Chamber of Commerce. So this, you can kind of see the roof terrace that I've been talking about with a few wee kind of trees there. Do you know where that's going to be? And this is what the cafe and the tea room looks like. Well, we hope is going to look like. So that is everything from me. Thank you very much. And well, I can answer any questions at the end.
Thank you, Tracy. What a fantastic project, and so much better for the town than just another spoon. So
Definitely.
We'll look forward to visiting that in the years to come. We're now going to hear from an organisation that's gone on a journey, as they say, over 30 years, from being a residents' association to running projects in the community to refurbishing and reusing historic buildings to deliver its programmes. So I'm pleased to introduce Derek Browne from Rathfriland and District Regeneration Company. Derek.
Thank you, David, and good morning, everyone. Can you all hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, good. So I'll just get a few slides up. Give me 1 second. Can you all see that? Okay, so I'm here to talk about Chandler's House in Rathfriland. Just to give you a little bit of background of how I got involved in this and what my role is. I'm an accountant and business advisor, but please don't hold that against me. I specialise in social enterprise, and I work a lot with social enterprises right across, but I deliver a social enterprise programme for Armagh City, Banbridge and Craigavon Borough Council. And I've done that for the last 6 years, and I've worked with a whole range of social enterprises. I'm also part of the Town Centre Regeneration Task Force for Lurgan, Craigavon and Portadown, and part of the Community Planning Working Group. And all of those bodies, what I try to bring is a social enterprise perspective to all of this. And when I'm talking about social enterprise, I very much come at this from a business point of view. And I focus on the enterprise side of it, because most of the social enterprises I work with are very good at the social side. That's what they're really passionate about. And I try to help them to think about and develop and deliver the business side of what they do. And I'm also very much involved in trying to link the community and social causes with business and with enterprise. And importantly, in terms of what we're talking about today, reconnecting communities with town centres. And I believe that achieving that is going to be a very important element of reinvigorating and regenerating town centres. A little bit of background about Rathfriland. Rathfriland is if you know, it's down in part of County Down, but it's within the ABC council area. It's described officially as a large village, although the residents like to call it a small town. Anyway, we'll not quibble. It has a population of around 2,700, and it's a very rural area. Many of the people who live there would commute for work purposes to the surrounding towns in the Belfast or Banbridge or Craigavon. It's often referred to as the gateway to the Mournes, and it's on the way into the Mourne area. The area has a rich history and heritage going back to the Middle Ages. And one of the things that is important to this project is it has a village square. So if you know Rathfriland, if you've been in Rathfriland, there is a square in the middle with what used to be a lot of commercial buildings around it. And dominating that square is a market house, which is also currently empty, along with a lot of those commercial buildings. So there's a declining village commercial centre, if you like, several empty buildings. It was interesting to hear in Bangor about an empty bank building, because there's several bank buildings that are empty in Rathfriland as well. And that's one of those we're going to be talking about today. Another aspect of Rathfriland is that there's lots of community activity, very vibrant community sector, lots of community space. There's a young farmers market, there's a community centre, there's church halls, and there's Rathfriland Regeneration itself. And Rathfriland Regeneration, Rathfriland and District Regeneration Company, to give it its full title, is a community-owned company that has been focusing on regeneration projects for over 25 years now, and has already undertaken some commercial and residential property investment to try and stimulate the local economy. So let's look at Chandler's house itself, and you'll see from that photograph, I hope you can see it there, it's located within what's called Church Square, the central part of Rathfriland. It's a former bank premises. It's been empty since 2017. It was acquired by Rathfriland Regeneration, RDRC, in 2014 when the bank left. The bank closed that branch. And then for a couple of years, there was a cafe, but that closed in 2017, and the building has been empty since then. It is 3 stories. The building itself is listed, but it's in deteriorating condition with water access, particularly around the roof. The building has been there since the 1800s, and it would have been part of a very vibrant village square for a long time, over 100 years. I got involved through the social enterprise programme with Rathfriland Regeneration about 3 years ago. And the group was looking at plans for this building. And we're looking initially at plans for community use, at education rooms, meeting rooms, and so on. And one of the first things that we did as a group was we looked at the need and demand for that. And one of the things that was pretty clear was that actually there was already enough community space in the village or small town, whichever you prefer. But so there's no real need for community space and no evidence that it could be viable and sustainable. So we looked at other potential uses, and we brainstormed, and we went through a fairly difficult process, I think, of actually looking at what were the needs, what were the opportunities, how could you develop this to really make a difference in the village. And what we come up with over a period of time was a music and arts venue, heritage use as part of a wider village initiative, and residential use on the upper floors. I have to say, and not just because Rita's on this call, but AHF were instrumental in helping the group really think those things through and really develop this project. They provided a viability grant, which allowed the group to bring in a conservation architect, and allowed us then to connect with the Village Catalyst Fund, with the housing executive, with the council, and with other funders to put together a project that was viable, that was sustainable, and that was going to make a difference in the village. And that's what we now have. So the planning approval is now in place for a music and arts venue in the ground floor and 4 apartments on the upper floors. I have to say, part of the thinking about the apartments was it does 2 things. Number one, it brings living space, residential space back into that village square. That's really important. But also it's going to generate an income. And that's going to be one of the things that's going to allow this project to be sustainable and also to generate income that will be used in the future for other community initiatives. So it has a long-term impact on the village and on the regeneration of the town, of the village centre. So we're currently, right now, as we speak, finalising the finance package with a mix of funding, a loan, and community investment. And the funders include AHF, the Village Catalyst Fund, the Council, Heritage Lottery, an AHF loan, and also investment from local people through the Social Investment Tax Relief Scheme, which has been which is a way of directing local investment into local projects. So the plan is, if all goes well, the work will start in the next 2 months. So it's very, very close, and we're kind of gritting our teeth, biting our nails, and we are very, very nearly there and ready to go. So that's what the project is. Now, I'm not going to focus too much on the actual building itself. I want to focus more, I think, on the process that we've went through to get to this point. So themes for today were diversity. The first one was diversity. So let's talk about it in terms of those themes and how we've taken those on board. So as I said, we went through a process of looking at what was the best way of bringing this building back into use. There was clear community involvement from the start. Rathfriland Regeneration is a community initiative in its own right. So it has local people who have a passion for the town or the village and who want to make it better for everyone. But they also broaden that out into the wider community and put a lot of focus on involving people. And this has been the result of not just 1 or 2 people thinking or planning. It's about involving a much wider community. It's about taking a very broad view of this. It's about challenging some of those things that we normally think about. I know we've just talked about having a cafe in a community space. I got to be honest, I've worked in social enterprise for quite a number of years, probably 20 years or more. If I had £1 for every suggestion of a community cafe, I would be retired by now. And that's not to say that community cafes can never work, but they're not always the answer. And sometimes it's important to think outside the box and really look at what the needs of the local community are. What is going to work in that space, to be open to new ideas and new thinking, and look at creating a facility for everyone. So that's how we have really taken that idea of diversity on board, about bringing people along, about listening to ideas and being open to those ideas. And I think we, as a group, we see heritage very much as for everyone, and about creating not just heritage for heritage's sake, but also creating shared history and a sense of place and involving people in that. And I think that's really important. That's important in this project. The next heading was authenticity. Again, hugely important. In social enterprise and the work that I do, as I said earlier, I focus very much on what works. And it's got to be looking realistically at what the opportunities are. So as I said earlier, in terms of being authentic, this is a very community-focused project. There's community involvement, community participation, and community connection. And all of those things are really important in developing this project, certainly. We've looked at what's best for the area, what's best for the village, what's needed, who can benefit from it. We've looked at the social purpose of this. How do we make sure that people are investing in their own community and realizing that this will benefit long-term their community. How do we involve people? I'm very open about aiming to make profit. Okay, and when I talk about social enterprise, I don't hate the term not-for-profit, but I don't use it very often. I like to talk about aiming to make profits and then reinvesting those profits in something good. And so that's what. This project doesn't talk about not-for-profit. We're very open about the residential being used to generate income that will be used to make this sustainable. But we're also talking about connecting the community with the village centre, a sense of a place or our place for everyone. And that's really important. That's what village centres were if you go back, and it's about recreating that in a different way. And then regeneration, and I'm almost finished. It's about bringing life back into the village centre. It's about creating housing and residential accommodation that will bring families into affordable accommodation in the village centre and bringing life back that way, creating residential use, but also then creating community activity and participation, largely through music and arts, and putting on events for everyone. I think I saw somewhere in the blurb for today about traditional music. It's not just about traditional music, it's about all forms of music and involving everyone. It's about generating, as I said earlier, profit for good, and using that as a catalyst for other businesses coming back in and creating life and vitality in the village centre. And above all, it's about sustainability. So that's how we've tried to bring those three headings together in this project. And we're very hopeful. As I said, we're very nearly there and ready to start building. And just in conclusion, some of the things that we've learned as we've been through this, heritage, as we know, is very much part of a community. I'm going to sound like a Philistine here, right? I'm going to say that I don't particularly, personally, I'm going to apologise for this, I don't particularly believe in heritage for heritage's sake, if I'm honest. I believe heritage is part of a community, and unless that exists, it can never work. If that makes sense. Older buildings are part of the heritage of a place and a community, usually because they had a function as part of that community and part of its history. And I think the challenge is to try and recreate that, but in new ways, looking at the role of that building in the place now. So we have tried to be creative and innovative about new uses and functions. We've tried to be realistic about what can be achieved. We have asked difficult questions of ourselves as a group, and we've tried to be honest about those answers. And there have been some things we've had to say no to, and that was not easy, but it's important to do it. It's important to ask questions: why, what, how much, and to be challenging in those. I think we can too often be too polite, and we need to be really honest with ourselves and as a group, and be prepared to have those difficult conversations. It's about business for good. I firmly believe that. It's about having a commercial mindset, but using profits to do good things. And I really believe this, that the future of town centres generally is going to involve reconnecting people and creating identity in a place. I think too many communities are disconnected from their town centres, and we've got to look at reconnecting people, creating identity in the place that they're in, but also combining that with commercial reality. So that's been a very quick run through. I hope that was useful, and as I said earlier, there'll be questions later on. So David, thank you very much.
Thank you, Derek. That was fantastic. I think I'm falling in love with you, Derek. You speak my language, and apologies that I hadn't quite got the pronunciation of Rathfriland right at the beginning there. So great to see that recognition that we don't always want more community space. It's something I've encountered over the years, and good to see a project that includes housing, which I think was one of our questions was about housing, which we'll come to later. So in all parts of the UK, we work with the Development Trust movement, which we have a lot in common with, as they're leaders in the fields of community ownership of built assets. I've already mentioned our partnership with Locality in England, but we also work with DTAS in Scotland and DTA Wales. And many of our members are also members of their respective development trust body. And after discussions with Locality, we recently revised our membership structure to introduce a free class of membership, to make it easier for those community groups who felt more at home in the development trust movement, or actually more in home in any other membership body, such as Association of Independent Museums, make it easy for them to also have a foot in our camp and, you know, get the best of both worlds. So I'm very pleased to introduce our final speaker, Charlie Fisher, Programme Manager from Development Trust Northern Ireland. Charlie.
Thank you very much, David, and thank you, Beverly, and thanks for asking me to come along. And is it still morning? It is just about. Good morning, everyone that's in the webinar. Yeah, I'll follow up on that membership thing with you. Let me just start sharing my screen first of all, and then we can move on from there. So is that viewable? Yeah. Okay. So that's who I am. I'm Charlie Fisher. I'm the Programme Manager with Development Trust NI, and as David has already said, we are aligned with the Development Trust network across the other regions of the UK. So what I want to talk to you about in terms of the title is where communities fit into the narrative around you know, high street transformation, community-led regeneration, recovery, and renewal. I'm going to take a sort of broad, sort of like brushstroke approach to illustrating through a number of different projects. Very magpie-like, I suppose I'm picking off other people, what they're doing, because I mean that's where the action happens. The action happens. It's driven by people in their places, you know. So I want to just talk to you about a few things, such as like where the policy context for the disposal of assets, which has generated many heritage asset opportunities for communities in Northern Ireland, comes from, and talk to you about some successful projects that are underway, opportunities, threats, and then I'll give you some challenges and concluding thoughts of that works within the 15 minutes. So in 2014, our executives are playing catch up with elsewhere in the UK, brought forward its own policy for the disposal of surplus public assets. And the little picture there is Templemore Avenue Primary School, which sort of preceded the policy itself. But, you know, that and there are many other examples which precede the policy as well, illustrate the roles that communities play in terms of leading the charge for the acquisition and repurposing of local buildings. And that's now a very active community development hub and a very successful, sustainable one with a number of co-located third sector and some private businesses in there as well. So it's a good model for success. But the framework, if you like, then was considering, you know, the need to invest in a strong and dynamic local government, and I'll come to that further on, developing, you know, prosperous, safe, sustainable places for citizens. And in that, I suppose the thinking was, if we invest in social enterprise growth or community business, as we like to call it, we are providing, hopefully, an opportunity to those communities through the acquisition of public assets. At that time, it was surplus public assets, but now it's more broad. It's broader than that. It's a conversation around where communities sit in respect of, you know, the acquisition, the management, not just the ownership, the meanwhile use, not just the ownership of public assets as well. And that's where we've moved on to. So that's the framework. That's what it is. It's a change in management or ownership of land and buildings and public bodies to communities. Although it's good to see that Kilcooley Women's Centre have entered into that space around the purchase of a private building. There's more to be done certainly in that space. And it's not, traditionally here it's been thought of as, you know, just getting title of buildings. And in many senses as well, it was an opportunity for the public sector to get rid of stuff that was at the end of its shelf life and underinvested in, and it was just really putting the responsibility onto communities. So it's not just about the title of buildings, it's around different types of lease agreements and meanwhile use, but its overall purpose, really picking on what Derek said there and what Rita was saying earlier on, it's about regeneration, and delivery of a wide range of social, economic and environmental benefits. So my broad sweep of the sort of the scene in the north of Ireland starts in Derry with Inner City Trust and their, I think it's Buildings Preservation Trust group that they had set up as well. The Inner City Trust is the group, and it is like 30 assets. And within the walled city, it has, well, 30 assets within the walled city. Many of those are listed. And I suppose we use that as an exemplar to say, you know, this is what can be achieved. And this started in the 70s when Paddy Doherty, as he was known, started taking and availing of redundant assets that were within the walled city because of the place we were living in at that time. But, you know, it's a great story, and it just shows you the art of the possible in the longer term as well. Inner City Trust are an anchor organisation in Derry City, and most of our members are anchor organisations in their towns and villages as well. And I think that's what we like to refer to them as, community anchor organisations, sitting alongside public anchor organisations in those places as well. So there's that. This is some of the work they've been involved in. The former Northern Counties building, which is now Bishopsgate Hotel. I know there were some proposals around trying to take the former bank down on Waring Street, North Street, Northern Bank, and developing that as a hotel. There have been a number of proposals for that. It's been lying empty since 2000, 21 years later. It's still lying empty. So there are ways and means of like engaging communities and engaging that enthusiasm to transform places. This is where Inner City Trust work out of themselves. And this is another successful initiative. This is Browne and District Community Development Association in, strangely enough, Browne, of all places. And this is the former police station, built to a blueprint of an all-island design pre-partition more than 100 years ago, since we're in the week of the anniversary. And you can see there on the top left, the two doors. One is the station door, one is the station officers' families' residence, which is upstairs. And that's what it looked like. And that's what like most of our police stations looked like in the north for many a year. The bottom left is when the community stepped in immediately and took down the wall themselves, all voluntary endeavour. And the picture on the right begins to sort of show what was being transformed. So what you have now today is on the left, you have like a new cafe, a trading space for Browne and District Community Association, which is let out, generates an income for them. The police station itself, they transformed that rather quickly. They have 4 businesses in that. And that's a hub, you know, for small businesses and for the community as well. And then at the back of that, somebody had mentioned housing earlier on. This was an initiative worked with Triangle Housing Association. And so you have, I think it's about 25 units at the back built by Triangle Housing Association. So I should say also that the Browne and District Community Association, who were the Village of the Year of Channel 4 in 2019, also have another heritage asset in the village called Houston's Mill. And they've been to the forefront really, you know, in utilising what they have in that space for the regeneration, you know, of their community. They're quite outstanding. This is a completely different one. This is the Carmichael Centre in Brunswick Street in Dublin. I just wanted to give a nod to some of the work that's ongoing in the south as well. This is a co-located space for community and voluntary organisations as well. And the Carmichael Centre themselves do lots of social enterprise development across the 26 counties in the south of Ireland. Oh, this is the Elios Centre. These are just graphics, of course, as you can tell. But in Newry, very much like Alison's and Kilcooley, it's Women's Aid Armagh Down, who already were in an old Edwardian building in the town and purchased the building which was next to them, which is 5 Downshire Place. And they have these huge plans for the redevelopment of those 2 assets. The picture on the left shows an extension at the back. And very much, I suppose, like what Kilcooley Women's Centre were talking about as well. It's around accommodating their consolidation of existing services and potential growth of a broader range of services as well. But I mean, these come with their challenges, and I'll come to that at the end. Like, but you know, that's where they're at. That's a successful initiative. That's ongoing. That's got some capital, but it's some way to go before it realizes all the capital that it actually needs. Kieran is in the call, and I don't want to steal Kieran's thunder, or Marianne, who's in the call as well, who was formerly Bangor's Shared Space. So the people in Bangor, for me, have been sort of quite, you know, very much in the space around regeneration for towns and transformation of towns for many, many years, you know. And so the Bangor Courthouse has now been transferred over to Open House Festival, which is brilliant. And I think it's really heartening to see that you have 2 community-led and community-owned initiatives in Bangor I mean, that just shows you really what can be achieved in some of our smaller market towns. For me, what stands out about this as well, and what stands out about Kilcooley is the other major developments that are ongoing in Bangor at the minute are being led by the Department for Communities, which is a huge public realm development. So there's substantial finance going in there for public realm works. And then the other significant investors are the private sector who are rebuilding and engaging in hotels. So it's great to see that front and centre, particularly around Queen's Parade, you have Open House Festival and what it is that they're trying to achieve there, which I believe includes trying to do something with the back of the police station and to build a performance space in there. Rita is another one of Mark Hackett's drawings. That's two he's had up today. Mark is sometimes the architect of choice for Regeneration. So, I mean, that's fantastic work. That's ongoing, and I wish Alison and Kieran the best of luck at Open House, and all the women and Alison and Kilcooley the best of luck as well. Ourselves as a network, we now are looking at the former synagogue in Belfast in Annesley Street. You know, again, it's been empty for a number of years. We have a number of thoughts and ideas around the acquisition and redevelopment of that. We've just had the covenant for its use changed in conversation with the local diocese and Mater Trust. There was a covenant for educational need on it, which restricted its disposal, but now we think we've got that changed, and hopefully that'll satisfy what we want to develop in it, which is really as a centre for citizen participation and planning. And our view in that, in terms of the contribution it makes to place and regeneration, is a stone's throw from that down the hill is the University of Ulster's new campus, you know, which will open its doors in September, which will have 12,000 students coming into it day and daily, and trying to create a pathway, if you like, from the university into that part of lower North Belfast. And we have been in conversation with the university about bringing out its schools for social development, for business development, and for planning and urban regeneration, and finding some ways of connecting that academic intelligence to the local community there and other communities who may be interested in using this space. So that's it. Architects' drawings is how we reconfigured. We won't do much with it. We treat it very much as it is. And we just hope to be really agile in terms of how we use that space post-COVID. I think that's critical now as well. I don't think we clearly have a full sense of how spaces will be used, and not be a mad rush back into office-based spaces. So I think we need to be creative. We need to be really imaginative, and we need to be able to adapt quite quickly to changing circumstances as they present themselves. Ultimately, it needs to be sustainable. This is another one. This is in Castlewellan. This is underway. So recently purchased, but it was purchased privately, by a philanthropic gift to a local community organisation, because the Department of Education didn't want to consider the potential social value and the economic contribution the asset would make to the regeneration and transformation of Castlewellan. They were just wedded to getting their capital receipt for it. But they've got it, and it's a quite imaginative sort of initiative. It's set in 16 acres of land. And there's an enormous potential there for, well, they talk about, you know, mental health and well-being as being a centre for that. So it'll not just like work for Castlewellan, it'll work for the rest of the constituency that it's in, and it'll possibly work for, you know, the rest of the island and further afield as well. This one is underway, and this has been known to most people. I think it's been burnt about 3 or 4 times, and this is what's left of it, which is the former courthouse in the Crumlin Road. Again, a stone's throw from where the synagogue is. But the interest of that is being led by Belfast Charitable Society, who themselves are, 250 years in the making. And they're presently looking as to whether that building can just be secured and whether it can be opened up, very much like we would open up a cathedral. You see redundant cathedrals, particularly in England. So, I mean, where you can walk through them, the fabric of the building is secure and safe. And then to think what can be done about it in the longer term. But again, it forms part of wider work that they're involved in, called Great Place North Belfast. And all of the initiatives they're working with there are heritage initiatives. And I know St. Joseph's are represented in the call today as well, which forms part of that, as does the synagogue. So, I mean, even that tells you something, that the key actors that are driving the agenda for transformation in this part of Belfast in particular are all third sector. Whether that's St. Joseph's, whether that's the Indian Community Centre, whether that's the Orange Hall, whether that's the Working Men's Club. And to me, that really tells us something, you know what I mean, about, you know, where the energy and enthusiasm for all of this lies, you know. This is the former town hall and cinema, which is in Kilkeel. And there have been many cinemas that have been acquired by community development trusts across these islands, Scotland, England, and repurposed to meet community needs. This is a former local government building, town hall, and their interest was not working with Kilkeel Development Association. Their interest was putting it on the market and trying to get the capital value for it, which is quite low. It's 80 or 90,000 pounds. You know what I mean? And to me, that's problematic. We need to find ways and means of engaging local government to our agenda in terms of reshaping our towns and villages and places, and thinking about where community fits into that in terms of transformation. So, and by comparison, and the buildings are not the same by any stretch of the imagination, but the cinema in Kilkeel is listed. So this is Bilson Town Hall, this is Wolverhampton, but it's owned by, it remains in the ownership of Wolverhampton City Council, but it's managed by Gazebo Theatre. So it's managed by a third sector organisation. And that's what I'm trying to get at in terms of community ownership. It's not a model which is about title. It's a model about working with the other relevant stakeholders to ensure that we, together can pursue our mutual priorities.
You've got 1 minute to go, Charlie.
Okay, quickly. This is a cinema in Newcastle, again, council owned, but the potential could be retained by council, but could be engaging local people to take forward. This is an opportunity lost. That's a school in Garva, and we didn't manage to do anything with that. And here are some threats. So on the left, we have Townsend Presbyterian Church. On the right, we have Nelson Memorial Church. Congregations are no longer existing. I know in Townsend Presbyterian Church, they don't have anything anymore. So Ulster Orchestra are now looking about relocating in there as a facility for practicing. And there's plenty of those. St. Joseph's, again, is another case in point across Belfast and our towns and villages. What do we do with those? Challenges are that the whole process was long and complex. We have to get the business case right for these initiatives, and we have to rethink social spaces and buildings and how we use them post-COVID. There is a shortage of appropriate finance in the north. There has been for years, and there continues to be. That's really problematic. And there is a skills gap and a capacity implications for third sector organisations. We need a more engaged and innovative civil service. We need to connect those who have policy responsibilities, those who manage programmes as states managers, those who commission for public services. We need to deal with the capacity issue. We need to engage local government as a critical stakeholder, see its place in this agenda for transformation, working with the third sector. We need to be robust and agile. We need access to capital. And it must be needs-led, as Derek said, not buildings-led. It's not about the preservation of buildings per se. So for me, we need to utilise assets to meet community needs and public service. And the heritage environment needs to serve all communities, not simply to be seen as a pursuit for middle-class enthusiasts. So we have to acknowledge that often many of these assets are in working class places or challenging places, which is market failure, redundancy, and we need to find ways and means to engage them to this task as well. And people and place, as somebody else says, are central to the overall success. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Sorry, pause there while I've got my cursor in the right place to unmute myself. Thank you very much, Charlie. It's really pleased that you sort of finished, although you took us down slightly, but finished with talking about the challenges that are ahead. And I certainly recognise those challenges, and particularly the need to get a better understanding throughout local government, and that's something that's not just confined to Northern Ireland. So thank you to all our speakers. I think that's been an amazing sort of overview of many of the projects that are going on in Northern Ireland and some of the challenges and issues that we face. And there is many, I know there's many represented on this call that we haven't had an opportunity to highlight as well. So we have a couple of questions, and the first lot of questions are probably directed more towards Jonathan than anybody else, but other people can answer them about the city deal. There's a simple one about has the city deal money been secured now, but also some longer ones about has city deal tied in with taking into consideration the Carrickfergus Townscape Heritage Initiative. Person says sorry if they missed that. Also interested to learn how City Deal can assist with community-led projects. Jonathan, are you able to respond to those?
Yes, yeah. I'll start off with the first question around the finance. So we have submitted the outline business case, and it's going through casework at the moment. So the plan is to get approval to proceed to full business case at the end of the summer to allow us to do detailed design and procurement. So we're basically at the completion of OBC stage, which will allow us to move forward and secure the funding. The second question was relating to how it links in with town centre initiatives or town heritage initiatives. So I know Iain's probably in a better position to answer this question, but I know that there's work ongoing in Carrickfergus, and they have done up some buildings there at the moment. We are really not 100% sure what we need to do to improve the buildings in Carrickfergus, and it's something that we're going to be working really closely with the likes of town centre initiatives and the high street rationalisation, etc., on how to do that, how to best do that. What we've done with the business case is to ring fence over £2 million to be able to deal with that issue as it goes forward. And I guess it's an emerging issue off the back of COVID as well. And there's discussions around should we be converting some of the shop spaces back to residential to bring more life back into the town centres, etc. So it's something that we will be working really closely on as part of the detailed design process as we go through the next sort of 18 months to 2 years. And we'd be very grateful for any help or input into that. And I know some of my colleagues in SIB are working on revitalising the high streets, etc. So I don't know, Iain, is there anything you want to add to that?
Thanks, Jonathan. I guess the crucial point in it is the city deals stroke regional growth deals if it's not Belfast. And as colleagues may be aware, there's one for Belfast region. There's one for the mid-southwest, which is this rather strange term, but is Causeway, is Armagh, City, Banbridge, Craigavon, Fermanagh and Omagh and Mid-Ulster. There's a northwest regional growth deal, which is Derry City and Strabane, and there is a Causeway Coast and Glens regional growth deal. They're each at different stages, with Belfast furthest ahead, then probably Derry, then Mid-Southwest, then Causeway Coast and Glens. And they're all driven by the councils, and the councils rightly are quite picky about this, that it's councils, it's all got to flush through government procedures because it's public money in the end. So if there are things you want to influence around, the councils and the council laws are the people to do that through. Government is being a validator, if you like, rather than a driver of these. There are, Carrickfergus is one example, Bangor was mentioned a couple of times, a reimagining of the waterfront and then necklace of activities along the waterfront that then connects to the Queen's Parade project. There's similar things in Mid-Southwest around a number of the towns and cities in those areas. Carrickfergus grew out of the Carrickfergus Regeneration Investment Programme that had been driven by the council for several years before some elements became the City Deal proposal. Other elements are still continuing within CRIP. So if people want to connect into them, THI is the same. The councils were pivotal on those. So councils and council laws are the people to influence on those.
Thank you, Iain. Our second question was, I know we've seen one example where housing has been part of the mix of reuse of a historic building. There's a question here about how we can fold housing into the mix to animate our town, village and city centres, how we can use more than for housing and also realise what that does for places as well to bring more people into centres. Is there anybody who wants to answer that?
I can give you some thoughts on that rather than answer it, if that's okay.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I take Derek's point. It is about, it's about sustaining the initiatives, you know what I mean? And it's the generative sort of way about thinking about place and making money stick to place as well. I think in the north, the issue for us, we have to get our housing associations more strategically engaged with local communities to think about what role they might play in working with communities to utilise built heritage. That's the issue for me. So that's what we did with in Browne as well, you know. But the problem we sort of have at the minute is most of our housing associations are either located in Belfast, you know, respond to social housing need, go into our villages and communities, build social housing and leave, and essentially extract, you know, the rent wealth from that social housing with them, which is why I think the model that Derek's talking about is good. We don't have the same opportunities that present themselves to communities in England. So we don't have community land trusts, for example. So none of that work that's going on in England, where communities are really taking the lead and responding to some of the challenges of local housing, are available to us. But I think, you know, if we do begin to at least, you know, connect what it is that we're trying to do as individuals and within groups with the roles and responsibilities of social housing providers, we can perhaps develop, you know, more locally relevant housing models.
I could just add to that as well. I mean, I absolutely agree, Charlie, with what you're saying about the community links and that the housing association sector need to be strengthened. And I think in terms of looking at the Rathfriland project was a small one-off project, and I think there needs to be more innovative thinking around encouraging communities to look at social and affordable housing. And I think there are barriers at a policy level that need to be thought about a little bit more radically. Maybe is that worth? I mean, Rita, do you want to comment on that a little bit?
Well, just to say, it's interesting the power of small and the project in Rathfriland has sparked off, I think, thinking within the housing executive who have come along as a partner in this project and who are also investigating as Village Catalyst hopefully will be mainstreamed, because it has been a great success, to see how they might get more strategically involved. And I think they do see the merit of injecting life on a small scale and having that catalytic effect and that sort of organic impact in the towns and cities and villages. But yeah, so I think they seem to be bought into that. And the idea of community-led housing, as you say, Charlie, rather than social housing, so a community-led affordable housing, which is something we're trying to get into the affordable housing policy, make sure that this case study of Rathfriland and others, you know, can showcase how you can, as I pepper these kind of projects around and have greater impact as a result. So yeah, I think it has fired off in their imagination what they can do across, they're very transferable projects.
I might just add there, by law, NIHE and housing associations have to focus their work on where there's areas of greatest need, where the waiting lists are longer. And the top 20 areas in waiting lists are all in Belfast or Derry. They aren't any of the rural areas, as you might expect, smaller populations, so smaller lists. Therefore, Rita's suggestion around community housing rather than social or affordable housing, I think, is an important element. But there will be a social housing needs strategy document coming from the department quite soon. I saw a fairly late draft earlier this week, and that does ask questions around reuse. So there are hooks for which the sector and others to respond. There's also a very decent chapter on climate change and embodied carbon and life cycle carbon. So again, there's areas to kick into, and there are people in the sector like Carol Taggart at Clanmill, which folded in Hearth, that are doing some of this. So it's again how we can build on it, starting small and working out.
Thank you. I think that's an ongoing challenge everywhere, and I think housing associations or sort of certainly the registered ones have been under such financial pressure and pressure to become more efficient that they're always looking at the scale of what they manage to and so on. So it's very difficult sometimes for them to work in that sort of more small scale way. and we have to look at the variety of vehicles that are available for community housing. We're close to the end here. I don't have any more questions on the chat.
You've had all the ones that I could find.
Have a question?
Can I ask you a question, David, actually, sure, about whether you've had any purchase with the High Street Task Force across the water, which has met once, I think, here, and I think we're really trying to note the comments from Caroline to expand these conversations, but hopefully on the back of this we can address the High Street Task Force in a very focused way. But have you had any purchase with them across the water?
Not as HGN, as far as I know. As you know, I'm not in the post that long, and that was obviously something that was established some time ago. I think I should imagine that some of our more active members have had that engagement, but we haven't as a national organisation. And yes, Caroline made the point about the fact that we chose to put a price on this for non-members, and I think yes, that's taken on board, and I can understand that although it was only a £5, for some people that's a barrier, particularly in local government, that you have to ask your boss for a £5 to join an event. So I think we'll look at that in future events, and particularly as we try to engage more widely. Okay, well, if there's no further point, I'd like to first of all point out not to forget about the job which Bev has just put in the chat, the connection to again. And if you're not interested yourself, think about whether you know anybody who might be, and please publicise it through your networks. Thank you to all our speakers today, and thank you for coming. Thanks to my colleague Beverly Gormley, who's been the sort of digital elf in the background, sorting things out and making this run smoothly. And all I'd say is look out on our website for future Northern Ireland events, and indeed online events more generally that we're offering. And we hope to really pleased to see so many people here today. Again, thank you to all our speakers who found a fantastic variety of projects and perspectives, and we very much look forward to working with you more in the future. And personally, I can't wait to get over to Northern Ireland and meet some of you face to face. So thank you very much, and have a good weekend, everybody. Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Bye.